In this video, we're going to be talking about sharps and flats. Okay, so what are sharps and flats? Okay, so by this time, we've talked about the staff. Here's our staff. We've talked about notes, and we've talked about how those notes have names. A through G, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Those are the note names, okay? So, for instance, if I were to take this, which is my bass clef, which I kind of wrote a little sloppy. So this is my bass clef, all right? And let's say we run into this note. Now, most of you, for those of you who don't know or are still learning notation, you're going to think about it. You're going to be like, okay, wait a second, there's an acronym for this. Good boys do find always, right? Good boys do. Ah, haha. There we go. All right. So we figured out that that's D, okay? Now, like we said in previous videos, if I move up, let's say I want to move up a step, it's going to take me from this line to this space, all right? So this, if I'm moving up, a step up from D, wait a second, a step up from D, I just got to say my alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, okay? Ah, that's easy. Much easier than having to say the alphabet backwards. All right, so there's my D, and there's my E, okay? Now, like I said, this is a step up. We're moving from D to E, okay? Pretty easy. But you probably don't know this, but there is a note that exists between these two notes, all right? So if this is a step, I'm talking about a half step, all right? So we can move half step up or half step down. We usually think of originating from one of these original notes that I was talking about, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so any one of these notes we can move up or down. So let's go to, let's put our E and D back on here. All right, so here's D. Remember our D? Good boys do. Yeah, that's right, that's D. All right, and we have to make sure we're in bass clef, okay? Because if this was treble clef, it would be a completely different note. All right. So we're talking about sharps and flats. So the first one is a sharp. Now, sharp looks like this. It's not a hashtag. Don't say hashtag. It's a sharp, okay? Hashtags is something else, okay? So sharp means half step up, okay? You're going to sharp something, all right? So let me take this sharp. It's just sitting there doing nothing. I'm going to put it in front of my note. Okay, so this is no longer D. I've raised it a half step. All right, so it is now D sharp. Okay, so I've put pictures of the keyboard online, so you can kind of see a little bit this keyboard that I have over here on the piano. So let me show you. You notice that we have white keys and we have black keys. The black keys are there because of these half steps. So if I were to show you D, here's D, and here's E. All right? So here's D, here's E. And if you can see in the video, there's a black note that's right between these two white keys. And if you have a keyboard at home, by the way, you should totally check this out on your keyboard, okay? If you don't have a keyboard, you could print out a keyboard, and you can take a look at sort of how the keyboard looks, and you'll see how the black notes are in between all the white notes, okay? So if I'm on D, and I go a half step up, I end up on this black note, which is D sharp. There we go. Not D, E, which is a whole step. D, D sharp is a half step. Okay? So, if I can go up a half step, well, can I go down a half step? Of course I can. So, we have a different symbol for that. If you want to go down a half step, we have something known as a flat. Okay, it looks like a little B, all right? Not to be mistaken for B flat, but yes, that does exist, okay? But in this case, I have my D. All right, now, instead of going up a half step, I'm going to go down a half step. So let's put my flat here. Now, this is a different note. It is no longer D. It is D flat. I'm pushing a different button on the piano. So let's go back to D. Here's my D. I go down a half step, not to C. C would be down a whole step. So I'm not talking about going from here to here. All right? That's down a whole step. Right over here. Okay? So this is going from that line to that space. This is down a whole step. This is going to the flat. So D to D flat. There you go. Completely different note. It is the half step. It's the note that's between D and C. All right, so I call it D flat because I'm starting on D, I'm originating on D, and I'm moving down to D flat. Okay, so when it comes to sharps and flats, figure out the note first. Say, okay, what note am I looking at? All right, then don't forget the sharp or flat, and then you have to say, okay, if this is a G, for instance, I have to say, okay, I figured out it's a G. Oh, wait a second, it's a flat. I'm going down a half step, G flat. All right? So be on the lookout for lots of sharps and flats in the music we'll be looking at. When writing your sharp or flat, make sure that the sharp or flat is directly in front of the note that you want to alter, want to make into a sharp or a flat. So, for example, if I write a note over here on this line, and I want to make this note sharp, my sharp has to go right in front of it. There we go. Alright, if you want to make another note flat, let's say I want to make this note flat, then I will put a flat right in front of it, just like that. So I know that that flat goes with this note, this sharp goes with this note. Alright, this way it's very clear. Okay, it's time for a quick check. Now, what I want you to do is make sure that you have your staff paper and a pencil. Make sure it's ready to go. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to have you write down a note. All right, you're going to be writing down a note. I'm going to tell you the note that I want you to write, and then I want you to write it. Okay, so I have my staff over here. Here's treble clef, so go ahead and write that treble clef. All right, remember we talked about how to do that. After you write this treble clef right over here, I want you to write a G sharp. I want you to write a G sharp. Now, you can pause the video. This will give you time to figure out the answer. Once you've written the answer, you can unpause that video, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Okay. Do you have the answer? Did you write it? All right, G sharp in the treble clef. So first thing you got to do is do your acronym. Every good boy does fine. Ah, yes, because we're in treble clef and we're talking about line notes. Now, of course, you could say, well, there's also face, but there's no G in face. But there's a G in every good boy. So every good here is our G. Now, we're missing the sharp. Remember, I want a sharp. Here is G sharp. Okay. Is this what you wrote? If it is what you wrote, then congratulations, you passed the quick check. If you decided, maybe you thought of a different type of G, and you wrote G sharp over here, well, that still counts because that is still a G sharp. This is one G sharp, this is a different G sharp. But if this is the one that you wrote, it is correct. Great job.